Hi, and thank you for joining me. My name is Rob Scott, publisher at UC Today, and I'm really excited to present this year's UC Trends series. If you're a fan of UC Today, then you'll know that every October we run a special video series called UC Trends. In this insightful video series, I talk to senior executives from trailblazing vendors in UC, collaboration and CX, and discuss their perspective of the marketplace and what they predict will be the next year's game changers. We will also have some fun with them at the end of the main interview session with some quick fire questions to reveal a bit more about their personality and what makes them tick. Stand by for UC Trends 2021. As companies search for greater flexibility from their communications stack than they can get from a one-size-fits-all model, Communications Platform as a Service, or CPaaS for short, is growing increasingly popular. CPaaS systems provide companies with access to communications APIs for advanced voice, video, and contact center functionality that embeds itself in your workflows and applications. One full-stack provider stands out from the crowd nowadays. Winner of Best CPaaS Platform 2020, Vonage continues to help organizations to engage their customers through personalized and contextual communications. I'm delighted to welcome to the virtual studio Vonage's API Platform President, Omar Javaid. Hi Omar, good to see you, and thanks for joining me on UC Trends 2021. Really keen to hear a little bit more about you, your year at Vonage and the road ahead. So how about we get started with a bit of background. Tell us how you got into CPaaS and finally at Vonage.
Sure, thank you, Rob. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I started with Vonage a little over 5 years ago. I joined in August of 2015, and I originally joined as the Chief Product Officer of the company. I was charged with basically revitalizing the team and revitalizing the product roadmap for the entire company. And many of your listeners may remember Vonage as a pioneer in the voice over IP space, and we started out as a home phone service company. So the way that we instantiated that voice over IP technology was to basically become a local carrier. The board realized that that wasn't a great long-term business, so they changed the management team, and Alan Mazur came in. Alan hired me, and basically we were charged with turning the company into a B2B software company. They had done about four acquisitions prior to me joining the company, and that was all in the UCaaS space. So I ended up pushing Alan and the board to acquire a company called Nexmo, which was a very early player and very successful player, a startup company in CPaaS. And my logic was really, just as the founders of Vonage had seen the future that broadband was going to change everything, and then this 100-plus-year-old telephony network was really just going to become an app on top of broadband, right? That was what voice over IP was. What I saw happening was that, telephony, or these things, what we call telephony, these capabilities, were really just going to become features within apps. And so, Andreessen Horowitz has this phrase that, software is eating the world. I believe that. I see that. I think we're living in that world, and that's what really prompted us to get into the CPaaS space. And I've had a lot of interest, and we'll talk about this, but even previously in my career, in API type businesses. So they've always interested me. They've always fascinated me, and I believe that's the present and the future. I think it's a great trend.
Thanks, Omar. And you've just recently won Best CPaaS Platform at UC Awards 2020. So congratulations. And I was really keen to kind of hear from you, how you've made such a successful business recently, certainly in the last 12 months. What is the secret sauce to success in today's marketplace?
Yeah, thank you. And we're really honored to win that award as well. Our success has really been, I know it sounds trite a bit, but it's really been about focus. We took this company, so that our API business is really the culmination of two acquisitions. First, I mentioned Nexmo. The second company is one that we acquired in late 2018 called TalkBox, whom we acquired from Telefonica, was a leader in the video API space. So at root, what is the problem? What is the problem, or what are the benefits that CPaaS are bringing? And really, we're making the lives of developers all over the world easy, or much easier. So as part of whether you're a small startup or whether you're a large enterprise, everybody's going through digital transformation. They're making innovative applications, and they need to incorporate all these. They need to incorporate these communication technologies into their applications. And at root, what all CPaaS players do is we provide a few lines of code. With that, we give you these sort of magical powers, these superpowers. So we make the lives of developers much easier. And so we've really, and I took over this as a business leader. I took over from my previous role as a chief product officer, as the president of the group about 2 years ago, and I've really pushed the team to focus even more and focus on that core mission of making the lives of developers easy and fun.
So let's talk about that success, that innovation at Vonage for a moment. What have you done in the past 12 months to really kind of bolster the business from a product standpoint?
Well, one of the things that we've done, especially in the last 12 months, is I mentioned that we had acquired a company called TalkBox from Telefonica, and they were a leader they were a pioneer actually in video in many ways, online video, and video API especially. So one of the things that we did, and we can get into this, but basically that I've always been interested in video technology as well, and a passionate believer in the kind of things that you can do with it from a developer perspective. So we'd invested in that business, and in a way, this perfect storm of the world that we're living in today, sort of this COVID world or coronavirus world. So we'd invest a lot in video, and we had big plans for that outside of anything happening now that none of us could have really predicted would happen. So that was one area of investment. The other area we had invested a great deal in and continue to is what we call the developer experience or developer relations. Essentially, part of what these businesses have that a lot of people don't talk about is the developer ecosystem. It's really important. It's really powerful. I've spent a great part of my career in mobile and wireless, so I like to use this analogy. So if you think about the mobile platform world, you have two players. You have iOS with Apple, and you have Android with Google. But it wasn't that long ago where you had Palm, you had Windows Mobile, you had Symbian, you had BlackBerry, and none of those platforms really made it in the end. And that was all about the developer ecosystem, because developers worldwide coalesced around two platforms, right? And then you have that kind of network effect. And so, we're blessed to have the second largest developer ecosystem in CPaaS, right? The number one being Twilio. They've done a fantastic job with that. But we have over 1 million strong registered developers. So that's the other area we invested a lot in, is in having a great developer experience, giving them the tools, giving them the geographic reach, and all of that.
Thank you. And just talking about workplace trends for a moment then, what trends are having the greatest impact on your marketplace and Vonage right now?
Yeah, the biggest trends, first and foremost, I think is remote work, right? And I think that's everybody's in the middle of that. So remote work is a big one. The other big trend is, and it was a trend before, so-called digital transformation. And the way I look at, I kind of have a simple view, maybe an overly simple view of digital transformation. But basically, what's happening is if you buy the thesis that software is eating the world, you've had these amazing technology companies. I still call them startups, but Amazon is hardly a startup. They've become these behemoths, right? So Uber, Airbnb, a number of these companies. So they've transformed traditional industries, right? So like Uber has in transportation, right? In taxis, library services, etc. And Airbnb broadly in hotel hospitality. And so what's happened is that you have these digital natives that have defined the initial CPaaS market, that have transformed these industries and grown big, and then you have the incumbents, which have to deal, like the Walmarts of the world. They have to now deal with Amazon, right? Um, they have to deal with eBay's, etc. So all of the incumbents are now investing. So if you use Amazon, you get used to a certain way that e-commerce operates, and then if you go to Walmart.com, you like it or not, you expect that, and so Walmart has to factor that in. So what you're finding is that a lot of these incumbents are now making big investments. They were making big investments before to compete, to compete and to transform the customer experience, for example, and else and sort of the whole part, many other parts of the business. So the two big trends that we've seen that we're really in the middle of, one is remote work, the other one is digital transformation, and really this sort of COVID. So the COVID world this COVID situation has really accelerated both. The third one, and I think this is more of is related but specific, is telehealth. Telemedicine, these sorts of things. That has been there for the technologies, the capabilities to do that have been there for quite some time, but it's just taken off like a rocket. So those are the kind of the three big trends that come to mind.
Thank you. And just talking about telehealth for a moment, could you explain that a little bit more in terms of what kinds of technologies are they taking on right now?
Yeah. So with remote work, what you're seeing is the rise of video conferencing, video conferencing technology, video conferencing applications, right? Like we've seen just look at Zoom stock, for example, right? It's just done tremendously well. With respect to telehealth, there's a number of things that are kind of new. So one, the notion of telemedicine or telehealth has been around for a long time. The actual usage was very, very low. And what's happened, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that video technology is hard. Doing video technology in general is hard. Then doing it at scale is even harder, right? It's a harder thing, right? Scale changes everything. You can have a one-on-one video service, but then when you have to do millions and millions of those per day, it's a very, very different. It's a much more difficult problem to solve technically. So that's one. Then the other aspects that are unique to telehealth, one is security, right? So there's a much higher level of security required, and much higher expectation rather of security. And then there are, I think the third part of it that makes it unique is just there's healthcare in general worldwide is a regulated industry, right? So there's a lot of regulations, country by country. So in the U.S., you have a set of regulations called HIPAA, right? So that's not just security, but it's ensuring privacy. The EU has data privacy laws, and then specific countries like Germany have even more strict or have stricter regulations. So, so one is just the technology itself, then the scale, and then there's a number of unique requirements, things that make video and the overall service itself unique with respect to healthcare.
Well, thanks for explaining that, because it sounds like you're absolutely right. As you go into these industries and geographies, that things become complex, and that's when you need a very flexible platform.
You need a lot of flexibility, and you need scale. So think about it. Think about it from this way. So the ability to have a virtual doctor visit has been around for some time. But the way that healthcare providers, so you look at the NHS, the NHS are a pretty sizable customer of ours. So they built that service with the assumption, right? So prior usage, so take COVID out of the picture. The way that they had thought about it and built it was, okay, less than like 1% or less of our customer base or our client base or our user base, however you want to put it, will use this, right? Because that's kind of that's the usage pattern that they'd seen historically. Most people, up until this time, for most people, if you wanted to visit your doctor, you did it in person. Most of us didn't think of doing it over video, even though that technology had existed. Now, just go back a few months. In a few months' time, it had gone from 1% or less of people using it to nearly 100%, right, or 80%, 90%. I'd say general visits with general practitioners. So what had happened is that many healthcare facilities had focused their resources on dealing with the pandemic. Then people were fearful of going into healthcare facilities, and in many countries, those outside of dealing with COVID cases, they had kind of shut down or really curtailed radically the services outside of that, and so but people still have billions of people worldwide still have healthcare needs, and so how do they deal with them? So what had happened is almost overnight, people started using these services in mass, right? So doing that at scale is, handling it for a few people here and there every week. You can do that. You can build a service doing that, but then to sort of flip the switch and do that at scale, do that in mass, you need the flexibility, as you pointed out, but the scale is a huge issue too.
Yeah, absolutely. So my final question then would be more around kind of the future. So kind of crystal ball moment. What does the market look like next year, 2021? What's going to have the greatest impact, do you think, going forward?
That's a great question. I think we're going to be in very much the same kind of situation. I think that this is sound a bit pessimistic, and actually would consider myself an optimist by nature, but I think that that this COVID situation will be with us for quite some time, and so we're going to be. I think travel will remain kind of restricted and depressed for quite some time. People will still be doing a lot of video conferencing, because I think even let's say even if we take a rosier perspective on the pandemic. I think what this has also taught everybody is that, and this is coming from somebody who has traveled globally extensively my entire 25 plus year career. I think what it's really brought home to a lot of people is you don't need to travel as much as you thought you did. That these video conferencing works. It's quite effective. You can collaborate. You can communicate and collaborate with people very, very effectively. So I think what's going to happen is that even when offices open, even when travel resumes, people become less fearful. Sort of rules and regulations are lifted, you're gonna see this sort of video conferencing, video meeting. That's going to become the norm rather than just what some people do when they're traveling, right? And so you're going to see video meetings, this kind of collaboration. So you're going to see this rise, this continued rise in that. What I think we'll see is more and more applications, right? So as we were talking about digital transformation, and if you look at it from the standpoint of CPaaS or APIs, a lot of what companies were doing in digital transformation were messaging and voice. That's still big. That's growing. Video has just been a standout. It's been growing like crazy, and I think that'll continue to grow because it's affecting so many different sectors, right? So we've talked about digital transformation, remote education. We talked about telehealth, but education is huge too. So you've seen people can't go to school, can't go to college, so most of these educational institutions they had to move quickly, and they started using off-the-shelf video conferencing software. I can say this as a father of two college-age children. You know, I don't think I'm unique in thinking that, you know, and this is maybe unique to your U.S. listeners, but I don't think so, because I've heard lots of my British colleagues and European colleagues complain about this. But look, there's no way that most parents will stomach paying anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 a year for college tuition just to do sort of video conferencing, right? For the child to video conference from home. So I think what we'll see is more and more companies, more and more sectors of the economy really begin to absorb, you know, this notion of remote work. And so you'll see even education. So if students will have to work remotely for the time being, they're going to have to rethink how they approach education, right? It's not just, okay, well, we have to deal with an emergency, students can't show up, what do we do about it? Okay, so that's what they did, sort of the version 1 of it. But if this is going to be around for a while, as I believe it will be, they're going to need to rethink. They're going to need to rethink things like education. How do you actually deliver that service remotely very, very well? How do you rethink education in that way? Which I think is a good thing. It'll help transform that industry as well. It's a huge industry globally. So I think that this pandemic and the aftermath of the pandemic will be with us for quite some time. I think video is big. It'll continue to be big. It'll continue to grow. I think around that, there's going to be a whole bunch of innovation, and we're seeing that. We're investing in that as well, around making that experience great. So, you know, I'm sure you're sort of living the same life I am. You're in front of your computer or a computer, right? Whether it could be a mobile device, to doing video conferencing all day long, right? And unfortunately, most of the video conferencing products out there haven't haven't invested in these, in, let's say, audio quality and video quality, the whole audio experience and video experience. What I mean by that is video meetings today leave a lot. They're far different, and there's a lot of research, a lot of really good research actually. They're not like in-person meetings, right? We know that. We feel that kind of intuitive. We feel that intuitively, feel that viscerally. There's a number of reasons for that. But interestingly enough, even though they're video meetings, the audio experience actually ends up being a very key thing for you cognitively, right? So what happens is that when people sit in meetings all day, you see video, you know, they're virtual meetings, they're video. when the audio experience is poor or not like or not very much like what it is sitting with a room of people, right? So you don't have spatial audio, you can't locate the source of sound. What happens is that people actually, your brain gets tired of this. There's fatigue, right? That sets in. So what I think is going to happen next, what we're doing, it's an area that I'm actually very, very passionate around, is improving the quality of that overall experience. Video, and most of video experience has been focused around, okay, we're going to go from standard definition to high definition, 720p, 1080p, now 4K. And that's one vector of it, but there's many, many other parts of what constitute quality video or improving the video experience and the audio experience for that thing. So there's a lot of it. There's a ton of possibility there.
I completely agree, because we seem to be missing presence, don't we? Looking at you through the screen is one thing, but having that audio experience and that visual experience will ultimately make that feeling of presence better.
Yeah, it's if you look at it, right, there's all technologies are kind of built on there's a mental framework that you use, right? So just if you look at what was Henry Ford said, if I'd asked people whether they wanted a car, they would have said they just want a faster horse, right? So a lot of what we're talking about in video conferencing, right? Even the audio component, the way people have thought about it technically and solved the problem technically has been this telephoning model, right? Which is, I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, and in real life, when you have a conversation, there are pauses, there are people interrupt, people talk over each other. And most audio conferencing, video conferencing services don't handle that very well, right? You see that in meeting after meeting every day, right? It's like, sorry, I'm on mute, or I can't, we're having a conversation which would be very normal face to face, like we're both talking at the same time, or we're, those sorts of things, and it kind of comes out garbled, right? Because people have thought through the technology, have thought through even down to how they've engineered and architected the audio stream, right? So all of these things now are being rethought, as they should, right? Because this is the new normal, if you want to call it that. So I think there's so much of that goes on, and there's some great research. There's a lot of exciting things that are happening. Let me just give you a very simple example, right? So I don't know if you use Snap, right? Snapchat. My kids do, so I started using it. And, they had all these fun filters where you could, map your face, and you could put dog ears on you, rabbit noses, whatever, right?
Yeah, my kids put all sorts.
Yeah, augmented reality, right? Augmented reality. Now, you see, look at the rise. There's all these interesting startups, for example, even all these video filters, right? Because now people are becoming conscious about it. I see it now. There's, I'm dealing with my colleagues day in, day out. People are investing in their video conferencing rigs and lighting and all these different sorts of things. Augmented reality has a role to play with that as well, right? So you see players like the big video conferencing players, they've invested in filters, right? So that, okay, you see now my office is in the background. I'm lucky. I have a nice, home office. Many people are, they're living at home with roommates, or they're living at home with their partners, their children, etc. And they may not have a dedicated home office space. And so, wouldn't it be nice if I could make it look like, project a serene image or an office space or what have you. And you're seeing that. So that's one trend, and there's there's a lot of interesting things going on there too, right? Augmented reality, right? That space.
Well, so much to talk about. I mean, we could go on and on, I imagine, for quite a while, because there's so much happening in this industry, so many possibilities as well. But it's been really good talking to you today. Hey, Omar, so this is now the opportunity for me to ask you some quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Fire away, Rob.
First job.
My first job was as a scientist. I was medical school bound, so I worked in a lab. We were actually doing research at the time in the early HIV medicine. So I was a scientist.
Well, that's a pretty impressive first job. I was a paper boy, so yeah, that's worlds apart.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll make it sound less impressive by what I actually did. I washed beakers and did software.
Start from the bottom, absolutely. Favorite day of the week?
Favorite day of the week is Thursday.
Go on, tell me why Thursday.
It's just a good vibe. It's kind of like the day before Friday. So I've traveled a lot my entire career, right? So this kind of unique environment. And what I really liked about Thursdays when I was traveling is it almost felt like and we have a large office. We have a large office in the UK, in London, and I've traveled to London, very, very regularly my entire career. So prior to this, I was going there almost every month. And so there's this great pub culture, and so there was always this really great vibe on Thursdays because they're almost beginning to starting easing in, or some people not so much easing in on Thursday. So it's just a great vibe, always a great vibe.
I do know exactly what you mean. Yeah, too many British start drinking on a Thursday.
Well, it's not just the Brits. You go Italy, Spain, and so there's a great vibe, right? Friday is Friday night, or Friday itself, and then Friday evening is the official start of the weekend. But I enjoy my work. I enjoy working. We have a lot of great colleagues, so it's always just a lot of fun memories with Thursday. So I always feel like that's.
Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or speak to animals?
That's an awesome question. I would go with speaking with animals.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. What's the most inspirational book you've ever read?
The most inspirational book, wow, that's a great question because I'm a bit of a reader too. The most influential book I've ever read is Dostoevsky. So it's The Brothers Karamazov.
Very good. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Keep it simple.
That is good advice. If you could teleport anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Well, right now, having sat at home for many months, I would go Riviera Maya, Mexico.
Nice. Voice call or video call?
Video call.
Dawn or dusk?
Dawn.
Are you an early riser? Well, you are this morning. I got you up at 6 o'clock.
No, I wouldn't consider myself a morning person in general, but I'm up early all the time. And a lot of it is, traveling as much as I have, being in different time zones all over the world. So I've always been up. Let's say at least for the last 30 years, I'm usually up around 4:35 time frame, just normally.
The jet lag does it every time for sure.
The jet lag does that. But even now that I've been home pretty much for the last number of months, pretty solidly, where many of my fellow colleagues on the executive team, the Vonage executive team, they're based on the East Coast, so they start the meetings that start at 9 a.m. 8 a.m., 9 a.m. So that's 5 or 6 a.m. my time. So I'm used to it.
So what's worse, ironing or gardening?
Ironing.
Most watched movie ever?
I think the movie that I've seen the most of is The Godfather, the original one, Francis Ford Coppola.
That is an awesome movie. My favorite is Godfather Part 2, but yeah, definitely with you there.
Yeah, they're both. I've seen the trilogy, and yeah, both 1 and 2 are incredible. Yeah, they're great.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Wow, that's a great question. Curious, intense, and friendly.
If you were given an all expenses paid trip to the north of England, would you take it?
I've been to the north of England. I quite liked it. So yes, I would do that.
Good man, good man. I look forward to that visit. So who is your greatest inspiration?
My greatest inspiration. So of a living person, I would say, actually, I'll say Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, and for a living person, the person that really inspires me the most is Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who's the author of The Black Swan.
Type, touch, or speak?
Touch.
Elvis or the Beatles?
Beatles.
Say "g'day mate" in an Australian accent.
G'day mate.
That's good. If you could go back in time for a day, what date would you go back to and why?
I would go back to... That's an awesome question. I would go back to the day that my daughter was born.
Wow. Which new technology will transform the future?
The one that has the most, another area that, so there's two areas that I'm really interested in. One is cryptocurrencies, crypto world. But I'd say micro mobility is the new technology that will transform the future. And that's not just self-driving cars, but it's the whole world of electric bikes, things like that.
And finally, Omar, my last question is greatest achievement ever?
It's a great question. I think my greatest achievement so far has been having some semblance of work-life balance. I'm sure you, like many of your listeners and many of the people you talk to, they're working sort of crazy hours. It's very difficult to have that. It's something I've really tried hard to do.
That's a really good answer. Thank you for that. And thank you for joining us today for UC Trends 2021. It's been great talking to you. Congratulations on having such a great year at Vonage, and I wish you all the very best for 2021.
Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate your time. I really enjoyed this interview. You asked some really great questions.